Chapter 2. Rebecca Smith took Brendan's preferred hand gratefully to brace herself on as she jumped down from the truck. She was a short, elegant woman with chin-length black hair and almost translucent light blue eyes. She was wearing a long-sleeved pantsuit, causing her to positively swelter in the early summer heat. Brendan smiled at her sympathetically as he helped her down. His truck didn't have air conditioning, and the wind through the windows couldn't have helped her too much with the heat. He privately preferred his vehicle without air conditioning, favoring the fresh air and natural temperature over the fake cool of the air conditioning. Besides that, he didn't think it was good for a man to work out in the heat all day and stress out his body with extreme temperature shifts if he could avoid it. Anya watched anxiously as Brendan helped Rebecca out of his truck. Kyle Smith was left to his own devices to get out. Brendan didn't particularly like him. It was obvious in the set of his jaw and the aversion in his sharp gray eyes when he looked at the man. Anya walked over to meet them, while Brendan hopped back in the truck to drive over to the barn to unload the horses. "Mrs. Smith, it's nice to finally meet you in person," Anya greeted warmly, holding out her hand. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when you were dropped off your car, but it was good of you to go with Brendan to pick up your horses." Rebecca took the proffered hand graciously. "Please call me Bobby. I've always preferred it over Rebecca, and Mrs. Smith always makes me feel so old. And it's not a problem. I wanted to make sure my beauties made it here okay," she said with a smile. "How many horses do you have here currently?" she asked, curious. "Well, we have about a dozen horses here at the moment, including the personal horses of the men," Anya informed both of them, proud of her and Tori's achievements. "According to your foreman, you have a breeding operation. May I ask how that will affect our horses?" Kyle asked. "You may," she replied politely. "Quite simply, it won't affect your horses any more than a non-breeding boarding facility. Our stud has his own pasture separate from the rest of the herd, and we have taken your preferences into account, and will have your horses pastured separately from our own." Anya held tightly to her patience while she explained. All the necessary information had already been passed to them in black and white, the question already asked and answered long before they had made the arrangements to board at the farm with their horses. "What breed do you raise?" Kyle asked. Anya studied him before answering. He was a tall, slender man with graying dark brown hair and sharp blue eyes that didn't miss a thing. He seemed harmless enough, if a bit brusque. "Our breeding operation centers around Canadian horses, but we do occasionally take on training projects of pretty much any breed," she informed him. Tori came out of the house at that point, dressed for work, and Anya devised a plan of escape. "What do you do with the foals?" Kyle asked as Tori approached. "I'm sorry, I've got work to do. Feel free to ask my partner in the operation, Tori Dashwood, anything else you may need to know. I'm sure she'll be happy to help you," Anya said, and started backing toward the barn. Tori, realizing that Anya had trapped her, sent Anya a glowering look over Bobby's shoulder. Anya was just lucky she had a few minutes free before she had to leave. Anya grinned and blew a smirking kiss at Tori before turning and striding quickly away toward the barn. She peeked in on the two new boarders, Bubble and Shock, and automatically double-checked their water and feed. "What, you don't trust me to do my job?" Brendan asked teasingly from behind her. Anya whirled around and almost collided with him. "Of course I trust you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have hired you and allowed you to choose who else to hire. Nice job for the most part, by the way." They both knew who she was talking about. "I'm giving Jonathan until the end of the week. If nothing in his demeanor changes by then, he's gone," Brendan promised. Anya nodded. She had known he'd be on top of the situation. "So what's on the schedule for today? I know I'm working with Superstar and doing stalls and turnout, but what is everybody else doing? And do you need me for anything once I'm finished with all that?" she asked. "Well, Sean and Jonathan are working on a fence that went down early this morning." She frowned. "How did that happen?" "An old dead oak tree went down with no apparent cause. It wasn't even windy last night." He shrugged a nonchalant "what can you do" shrug. "They'll be busy at that most of the morning. Since Sam's off today, any training that needs done today is on us." He watched her turn to pat Bubble on the nose when the gangly mare butted her, hoping for some attention. Normally Anya would give the horse a carrot or something, but she resisted the urge, not sure what Kyle and Bobby wanted their horse treated with yet. A quick look told her they could use some extra feed to put some more flesh on their bones. She made a mental note to ask the new boarders if she could increase their hay and grain rations until they had put a little bit more weight on. "Okay, who needs work with today?" she asked after a long pause. "When you're done with Superstar, Marvel could use some groundwork," Brennan told her. She nodded, and they both went to work. Stalls came first, so she turned out all but Superstar, Marble, and the two boarders. The boarders would get turned out the following day, but she wanted to give them some time to settle in, and their stalls were already clean. She worked quickly through the rest of the chores before getting Superstar ready for his workout. The handsome 3-year-old quarter horse had a bright future as a barrel racer if she could get him solid under the saddle. She already had a buyer lined up for him as long as he was ready to race by fall. She saddled him up and led the handsome piebald gelding to the mounting block. They had been working on it for a few days, and he would finally hold still now while she stepped lightly into the stirrup and swung into the saddle. The barrels were already set up in one of the training rings to get him desensitized and used to the routine, so she started him at a steady walk along the fence line to warm him up before guiding him in. "Keep those heels down, Anya," Brennan called jokingly to her as he and Slate passed her at a small trot. He was posting with grace that Anya couldn't help but admire as he went by. She also couldn't help but be impressed with how quickly Slate had been progressing under his skillful tutelage. Slate still needed a lot of work put into her, but just going by at a trot was an accomplishment. "Yeah, right," she called back to him. Slate chose that moment to pitch a fit and started a string of bucks. Superstar, not to be outdone, decided to prove his own spirit by following suit. Anya easily kept her seat, but didn't appreciate the jarring. She schooled the gelding into control quickly and firmly. As soon as Slate played herself out, she also stopped. "I blame you," Brennan told Anya jokingly. "She was doing just fine until you called out." Anya just shook her head at him, both amused and annoyed by his attitude. Brennan smiled winningly, but was smart enough to get out of firing range. He nudged Slate forward and was around the corner out of the barn in no time. Anya halted and calmed Superstar with quiet words and a few gentle pats on his glossy neck. When he was ready, she urged him back into a light walk to ease him back into things again before turning him towards the barrels. They spent nearly 2 hours going around the barrels and working on lead changes and controlled movements before Anya called a halt. She walked him to the barn and replaced his bridle with a halter and deftly cross-tied him. She pulled off his saddle and other equipment and set to grooming him. When she was finished, she turned him out into the field and went to the house for a quick break and a snack. She spent some time in the office while she ate, and when she was done, she went back to the barn and haltered Marble for some work. The young mare danced with anticipation in the cross ties. "Easy, girl," she admonished with a laugh and kissed her lightly on the nose before grooming her. Marble was 4 years old and a good size already at 15 hands high. She was a striking light chestnut with a flaxen mane and tail, white blaze, and 2 white socks. Athletic and spirited, she had a lot of potential as a show jumper, and Anya was considering sending her to make the rounds for a few years if she could find the right rider for her. Anya led her to the training ring and looped her reins over the fence while she rolled the barrels away and set up a few poles and training jumps to work Marble through after lunging. "Here we go, Philly, time to get to work," she told Marble when she was ready. She clipped on the lunge line, leaving the lead rope hanging over the fence, and guided the mare through her paces. When Anya was done working with Marble, she turned her out with the rest of the herd and gulped down some water. It was starting to get late and hunger was beginning to gnaw at her, but she wanted to go out and see the foals and work with them in the field for a bit before bringing them in. She gathered the supplies she would need and started out to the front pasture where the mares were turned out with their babies. "Going to see the foals?" Brennan asked knowingly as he entered the barn. "Yes," she answered shortly. "You aren't still mad about earlier, are you?" he asked. "No, I wasn't mad," she told him. As soon as she was clear of the barn, she quickened her pace with anticipation at working with the foals. The mares started in her direction as soon as they saw her, their spindly-legged foals at their sides. The horses nudged her and whickered and crowded around, each trying to get all the attention and treats. Anya laughed and pushed them away once they'd had a few treats each, so she could also offer treats to the foals. Bora's little colt was a handsome fellow, without a hint of white on him. He watched her warily with his bright brown eyes. She offered another treat to Bora and moved her hand toward her colt slowly, giving him time to show her if he was scared enough to move away. Clearly interested in what his mother was eating, he took a few brave steps forward and nuzzled her hand until he found a small bit of carrot and apple. He munched them down eagerly before Chinook pushed forward, determined to have whatever he was getting. Bora's ears went back, and she tossed her head in agitation as the other mare got too close to her foal, and she swung her head toward her colt to get him to back away before she'd settle down. Anya shook her head at the byplay and obligingly gave Chinook another chunk of carrot. Her filly wasn't interested in what her mama was doing, and pranced around to stretch her long gangly legs and toss her shapely head, her star and socks flashing bright against the green grass. When she got too far away for comfort, Chinook followed after her with a gentle nicker. Anya was already excited about Chinook's filly and was definitely planning to keep her as a training, then potential breeding prospect. The stallion they'd used for breeding had an impressive resume, and Anya was excited to see what the filly was made of. Eventually, the excitement wore off, or, rather, the treats were gone, and the two mares returned to grazing. Anya watched them for a while longer, her heart full of gratitude to God for all that he'd blessed her with. She prayed, sending up silent thanks as she looked at the mares and their foals one last time before reluctantly walking back up to the house. When the horses were brought in later, they would do the most work with the foals, feeding them, feeling all over their bodies, not only to check for any bruises or lacerations they may have picked up in the field, but also to get them used to being handled everywhere. They checked their mouths and lifted their legs, put ropes over them and haltered them, on and off with small handfuls of grain, pieces of carrot, or apple slices offered as a reward. They weren't leading them yet, but that would come. Anya believed that starting early and taking things slow and steady made it easier on the foals and would help them to be better horses down the road. She didn't want them traumatized or pushed into things. She wanted them to enjoy their time with people and even look forward to it. "So, Sean, how'd you get this job?" Jonathan asked, curious how the very experienced, very in-demand, tall and muscular man with sandy brown hair and dark blue eyes had gotten a job on such a new and unproven ranch. Sean was well known in the horse community, and Jonathan figured the man was too good for the likes of the small-town enterprise. "I applied for the job and Brennan hired me," Sean replied shortly, throwing a heavy chunk of oak into the bed of the pickup truck. He was already looking forward to the massive bonfire they would have in late summer or fall. "But why did you apply?" Jonathan persisted, sitting down on his portion of the tree they were clearing. Jonathan had suggested that they each take a half of the tree and downed fence, and Sean had readily agreed to the deal. He was glad he had, since he already had his half cut into huge chunks, just two left to throw into the truck before he'd move on to the fence. Jonathan had barely started. "Maybe I like Canadian horses," he suggested with a careless shrug. He tossed another log and went back to get the last one. Sean quickly finished up and moved on to fixing the fence they'd just barely put up last week. He grabbed up a new board to pound into the posts that fortunately had survived the fallen tree, and pounded it in straight and true. Sean could just barely see the herd from where he stood. He stood and watched them for a minute, enjoying the sight before going back to work. It was a smart policy to have the fences checked every day before the horses were put out, and he gave a mental nod to Brennan for instituting the procedure. He had originally scoffed it, since they had literally just put up the fence around the new 15-acre field, but that was why he wasn't the man in charge. "You don't have a better answer than that?" Jonathan asked as he took another break. Sean fought back the surge of impatience that threatened his usual good humor. Brennan had warned him about Jonathan, and he didn't need the grief. "Well, let's just say that me and horses go way back," he drawled. "What's Sam's story?" Jonathan asked, realizing the man wasn't interested in sharing his own. "I don't know. The only thing I know about Sam is what I've learned since I started working here," Sean said, allowing a hint of annoyance to enter his tone. He put the finishing touches on his part of the fence and was tempted to leave, but he didn't think Jonathan was finished talking at him. He leaned against a board he just put up and waited. "What about Brennan? How'd he get the job?" "Now that's a great story." Sean grinned and shot Jonathan a knowing look. "You should ask him about it sometime." With that, he'd had enough and mounted his Morgan gelding Jester. Nudging the compact bay into an easy trot, he rode off toward the house. How that man got anything done with his penchant for gossip was beyond Sean. He was grateful he had secured his position in the kitchen, so he'd have a good reason to leave Jonathan out in the field alone. When they arrived at the barn, Sean stripped off Jester's gear and settled the horse into his freshly cleaned stall, courtesy of Anya, checking his food and water conditions automatically. Assured that all was as it should be, he gave Jester a treat and went to the house through the side door by the kitchen. "How's it going today, Sean?" Brennan asked, looking up from the paperwork strewn out on the table in front of him. Mostly Tori did the paperwork, but there were some things that he had to deal with and keep up with that she couldn't. "Not bad. That fence is mostly fixed. Jonathan's still out there working on his share of it. I think he needs to stop talking so much and concentrate on his work," he commented as he got a drink of water and sat down at the table, removing his gloves and hat. "Yeah, I'm dealing with it." He gathered the papers together and started loading them into a massive binder. The thing had to be at least 6 inches thick and was nearly bursting at the seams. "Good to know," Sean muttered. "So, is that the biggest binder in the world, or is it just my imagination?" "We'd be lost without this thing," Brennan replied seriously, patting it. "It has pretty much all the paperwork that has to do with the ranch in it." Sean pulled eggs and bacon out of the fridge. "You hungry?" "You joking?" Sean grinned at him over his shoulder. "More often than not." Brennan chuckled in response and settled back in his seat. "I could eat." Sean warmed up the skillet and started the coffee.